Okay, the area I'm filming now does contain the largest proportion of rescue plants, and it's just dawned on me the majority of my rescue plants are flipping Oncidium types, and this stems from buying plants with lousy root systems and struggling forevermore to try and create a root system, and sometimes it just doesn't work and they don't make it. You know, they are a nuisance. If you get on with good root systems to start with and maintain those root systems, you'll have strong, vigorous plants, but it's not always easy to do. Anyway, this is, it's got a tag that says Dendrobium Victoria Reginae. It flipping well isn't. The flowers came out pink. So I'm not keeping this. Partly due to annoyance because it's not what I thought I'd bought, and that's still outstanding. I still need a good version of that plant in my collection, and until I get one and I can see the blooms, I'm not getting another one and getting caught out like this. This currently is doing kikis. There's 6 and they've got open leaves, or starting to open, and producing some roots. So these will get separated off. I usually stick kikis in a glass of water for a while, because these are pure aerial roots. They never see water, only humid air obviously. And to stick them straight in a pot, it usually ends up with them stalling, and they just sit there for quite a while and don't move. Whereas I've found if you just put them in a glass of water with the root tips touching the water, you know, your actual water culture, it acclimatizes the roots to having some moisture on them, because they do wick up obviously, and they take to potting a lot better after that treatment. I usually leave them, you know, touching the water, the root tips, for a couple of weeks or so, just to acclimatize those roots to being moist instead of just having air around them, and then they seem to take off quicker when you pot them up. So that's that one. The whole plant will go. I'm not keeping, it doesn't warrant its space, because it isn't the real thing. It's probably a cross, and it probably has Victoria Reginae in it, but it isn't the real thing, so that's to go. And the rest of these I'll just knock out together. At the back there is my Nellie Isla Red Velvet. That recently bloomed on that pathetic little new growth, but that was a winter growth. I'm just sitting waiting for that to push on some new growths now. It's just sitting there doing nothing at the moment. I keep it cool, you know, I do the best I can with it, but it's a matter of, it's got some roots, but not what I'd say good roots. So that's just, it's up to it now. It's got to do its own thing. You can only do so much yourself. This is a rescue, plant rotted. I managed, I think, to save it, because the bulb I've got is not soggy, and it does have a new growth, and it does have some roots. This is Melissa Briony. And I'm beginning to notice another pattern on these types. When they bloom in the winter, because of the cooler temperatures, the blooms last absolutely ages, way, way beyond their normal lifespan. And because it's the winter time and the temperatures are low, the plant's not really doing much as far as growth and new roots are concerned. And I've just got a feeling that those spikes are depleting the plants, reducing their strength. But anyway, this does have a new growth that at the moment is firm, and with roots that should pull on. This one is this is just called Cambria, and the blooms on this are stunning. It's currently my computer screensaver. Lovely strong new growth and root system to go with it. So that's not a rescue, in fact. That's doing okay. This one, however, is. This is, it's classed as Oncidium, but it's in fact an Odontoglossum, and it's Golden Rialto. Beautiful blooms. The latest growth on it came out sideways. Well, yeah, so be it. And it did actually bloom. But it's starting to grow some roots now, so it is being rescued. It has got some viable roots in the pot, but again, I'm waiting for a new growth on that. Hopefully at least as strong as the previous one, because all of the bulbs are quite desiccated. It's a sure sign that a plant's not happy. It's just not getting hydrated. That's a mixed bunch. This is the other plant that was in the auction box with the Peggy Ruth Carpenter and the Zygo that I actually wanted. This is an unusual thing. It's an Epidendrum Mabel Canda. It's crossed with, that'll be Encyclia cordigera. So it's an unusual thing. and it doesn't seem to have much of the cordillera in it unless it's just a young plant. A nice new growth just starting here. It produced several new growths after I got it. It's got a root system, hasn't bloomed yet. Whether it's big enough or not, I know just nothing about this plant, and I just treat it like it's cordillera side. Whether that's working or not, this remains to be seen. This is Brassia tessa, or what's left of it, and this single bulb that's filled this pot up with roots, it's done really well. But it tried to bloom, and I took the spike off. And literally, not too long after taking that spike off, it did what I wanted it to do, which was produce a new bulb. That's its future, otherwise it's just a single bulb that now isn't going to bloom because I took the spike off. So what I'm hoping is that this growth will push on strong, get some more roots on it and build its strength back up, because that one went down quite fast. This is one of my Latoria types. This is Alexandrae. Quite a few of my Latoria types are actual hybrids, but this is a species. I can't remember whether this one has bloomed. I don't actually think this one has yet. But again, both of the latest growths have sheaths. Each growth it's produced has got bigger and bigger, so it's doing okay. And again, it's got another nice new growth at the base. Seems at the moment it's producing single new growths each time. But each one's getting bigger, so the plant's getting bigger and better. And if this new growth does the same thing, well, it's doing progress. But whether these sheaths are actually going to push and bloom or not, I don't know. That one does look as though it's got signs of movement. But again, wait and see. They seem to sit there with the sheaths for some considerable time, and then they just suddenly start going and bloom. Or don't, one or the other. Two choices. Here we go again. This is my Oncidium varicosum variety Rogersii, named clone Balding. And it isn't anymore, it's totally changed its name. Look at the base of that oldest pseudo bulb. I don't need to zoom in on that, do I? Now those could be dead, because last time I watered this I actually did the spot treatment with the alcohol. But it looks like there's some fresh white beasties down the bottom, so something's hatched out, so that's going to have a... I mean, the Bravado that I use is a contact killer and a systemic, so it comes at them from two sides. It's the best I can do. There isn't much else I can get hold of. But that needs a good spray, and I've been spraying the plants as I pick them up and notice any scale, or the fact that they've been sat next to and touching plants that have had scale. And this one may come into that category. There's no sign of any scale on this plant at the moment. It's clean. This has been being rescued from a fusarium infection for a very long time. And I wondered whether I'd actually got it in time. It has beautiful blooms. It's an Alicera, evening colours, the gloaming. And I really, really did not want to lose this. It's produced some roots. It has got a new growth. It doesn't look that strong. So I think that... but this growth has decided to push a spike out. And because it's a reasonable sized plant, that can be allowed to bloom. But I'd still class it as a rescue. Yeah, although it's got roots now, that doesn't look very happy. But then that started midwinter and just grew really, really slowly. The fact that that's got no scale on it, that's actually going to get a treatment with the fungicide. Because although any signs of fusarium in the past have been multi-treated with the fungicide, including different sorts when I first started, none of the plants have been treated for a very long time now, probably since last year. And although this is growing, it's not growing fast. So this may still have some lurking in it. So that's going to get the fungicide on it today. Put an entry in my notes to remind me to do it again in 10 to 14 days, because one isn't good enough. If you're going to treat with systemic fungicide, again, read the label. Do what it says on the label. If it says repeat in 10 to 14 days, then do it. You know. So we'll give that one a go. And well, at least it's going to bloom. So I've been talking for probably 18 months to 2 years about the wonderful blooms on this. Well, perhaps we're going to get to see them at long last. It's not always possible to get good examples of something, but it's just dawned on me I now have an opportunity. This is my Miltonia Queen Anne. Came from Madeira, bunch of 3, all had fusarium, pretty bad. Really in the plants. They were all treated, one didn't make it. This one did. The example I want to show is that obviously it was the older part of the plant that had the fusarium, and it gets in the rhizome, the base of the roots and the base of the pseudobulbs, and bungs them up so they can't hydrate or pass nutrients around. That's how it kills the plant. Slowly but surely, but that's what happens. But if you can stop it with a good systemic fungicide, it'll stop it, or it'll slow it right down. And being quite a vigorous plant, it grew on, yeah, and it grew that pseudobulb there, the older one, and that came up okay and produced roots that were clean and carried on growing. It then produced 2 more new growths with good roots and pushed on really strong, and now has a spike. This is exactly the same example. This is the one I've just filmed. This is Alicera, Evening Colours, the Gloaming, and I've been looking forward to this hopefully recovering. This had it bad, came from a common source that knocked out so many of my cattleyas. That was before I even knew about it, but this one I got to. Now if you think about what the fusarium did to the plant, it would have been in the oldest part of the plant, yeah? This is a new growth, and it's pushed on okay. It's got a pseudobulb the same sort of size as the others, and it's now blooming. However, this new growth is coming out nearer the back of the plant. Yeah? Well, if that part of the plant is bunged up, this little growth isn't going to make it. It won't hydrate. And that's exactly the same as this little growth here at the back of this plant. It's never going to progress. It's in the part of the plant that was infected. Now, even though I may have killed off the spores and stopped them bunging up new parts of the plant, you can't repair the damage done. So that's a classic example. This new growth could be coming up from a part of the plant that's bunged up, and this one wasn't, and this one is, and these aren't. So again, symptoms: lack of vigour, new growths much smaller than they should be, roots not growing. They start and then the tips just go brown or black and they stop growing, and the vigour of the plant slows and slows to the point where it is actually dying, and you need to get at it. Only sure way to prove it is cut the rhizome and look for that purple ring of death, as it's endearingly called. I can call it lots of things, but anyway, that's 2 plants that have had it. This one's now okay. The back part of the plant is still bunged up. That's never going to recover, and this is going to go in a pot after it blooms because it's escaping its mount, and it needs some of its roots into something, not totally aerial. It's not how it would naturally grow. So when that goes in a pot, the back end of the plant can come off, and hopefully that's the end of it for that one. And this one, again, same sort of treatment eventually. This is obviously a better part of the plant. It's just been treated again, just in case. Once this spike has finished and new growth starts in this area of the plant, this may make it, it may not. If it does, then I'll keep the whole plant. If it doesn't, the back end of the plant can come off next time it's repotted. So yeah, as I said, it's difficult to get examples in the right stage to make it worthwhile talking about them. Pictures tell a story. Words don't necessarily cover it. Now, these are the last 3 from the dodgy area that I've just found that seems to have some scale getting going again. So both of these have just been sprayed as a precaution. And boy, my hands are going to be the cleanest they've ever been, because obviously when I'm spraying plants I do get some on my skin, so it has to be washed off immediately. I don't do gloves, But that doesn't mean to say I don't recommend it, especially if you've got sensitive skin. Then if you're going to use chemicals, protect yourself. And if you're okay with wearing gloves, then get the flipping things on. But I don't feel comfortable with gloves on, so I don't do it. I just make sure I wash stuff off immediately, as it says on the packet, tin, jar, spray bottle thing. This one, I haven't got a clue what it is. I think it's a Howiara, but the tag's gone. It has a new growth coming, and it was in a state of rescue. It still is, I suppose, but yeah, one day I'll find out what it is. Somewhere lurking in these small plants is a miniature Oncidium type dancing ladies type, and this could be it, because this had 2 spikes on that growth, and it's one my daughter bought, and from memory I'm pretty sure it had 2 spikes at the time. So this could be the miniature Oncidium dancing ladies type, but until it blooms again we're never going to find out. This one is exactly the same. So one of these two I think is the miniature dancing ladies type, and the other one is a Howiara. But until they bloom again, no idea. And this one's just been sprayed, even though I couldn't see any signs. It's deciding to climb, which is a flipping nuisance, but nonetheless the roots coming off the climbing part are getting down in the media. Nice new growth coming on that part of the plant, and against all odds, the manky old back end of the plant, which I normally would have cut off, would you believe, has a growth coming out of that, whatever that's supposed to be, and it looks like it's got another one coming out down there. So in theory, possibly 2 new growths in this really old part of the plant, and a nice new one on the front end, the proper lead. So that's those 2, yet to be identified. And this one that lives in amongst them is actually a Maxillaria picta. And I think this is the one where I have to say possibly. This one bloomed not that long ago, and it was wrong. The bloom was not right for that type of plant. It didn't have all the markings and everything on the bloom. So it's probably an alba form or a semi-alba form, but it's not what I bought. Nonetheless, it's pushing on some nice new growths. One here, one here, one here, just getting its leaves. So it's growing, and it's highly likely to bloom on those new growths when they mature. And I'm keeping it long enough to see what it does next time, and see what the colour of the bloom is. If it turns out to be the same as it was before, then it can go, because it's not what I bought, it's not what I wanted, and the blooms aren't as nice as the ones I was expecting. That doesn't mean to say they're not nice, they're just not what I was expecting. So that's those 3. Talk about multitasking. I just took that down to water it and film. But again, with multiple new growths coming right on the edge of the pot and a lot of algae in the pot, I'm glad I didn't water it. That's going to one side to be repotted as well. Right, there may be a duplicate here. I can't be bothered to go and check. This is my other Shari baby, and if I've already filmed it, tough. You get to see it again. This one's doing well, actually. It's producing a good root system, and it's got a couple of good strong new growths starting on it. It has recently bloomed. Not the one that's in bloom at the moment, the one that was before that. But this one's coming on. It's losing a lot of its older leaves at the moment, so it looks a bit manky, but new growth's coming, that's the good bit. This is one of my Latorias. This is Polysema crossed with Aberrans. And this one has produced so many new growths. I'm just over the moon with this. It's growing incredibly well. It's coming to the end of its blooming now. Yeah, that's 2 spikes going over. There's one little spike in there that was the last to open of the 3. That's still hanging on in there. But if you look at the size of the canes that it bloomed on, and now look at the size of the canes it's grown, it's progressing at an incredible rate and increasing the size of each successive cane that it produces. Has it got any new growths? No, these are the new growths at the moment, and they're coming up to maturity. Again, bugs, when those little canes were just opening their leaves, they're now marked forever. There's no bugs on there anymore. In fact, my Dendrobiums are the ones that get the least bugs, but that did have a few. that I missed obviously, but the rest of the new canes are nice and clean and nice and big. So down the line they will bloom, and hopefully they'll produce more blooms per spike this time, because they only had a couple on each one. But they are pretty little blooms. Quite dull looking at them from the front. Pretty, but you know, but most of the patterning is on the back. Lovely spotting on the rear. And the fact that they're sort of pendulous, depending on whether you put it on a high shelf or a low shelf, depends on the view of the blooms. If you look down on it, you see the pretty patterns on the back. But anyway, that one is growing incredibly well. And where have you been, you dirty stop out? Hey, where have you been then? Well, I don't really want you in here because there's sprays around today, till we get some water chucked round. You go and find some sunshine to sit in. No, come on, you're not coming out here, come on. He just wants me to go and pick him up and say hello, which I will now do. What about that then? You couldn't get 4 more different Dendrobiums on a table at the same time. Right, at the back, this is Dendrobium delicatum. That was just bought as a single kiki. It grew 1 new cane last year. I'm still looking for signs of new growth at the base. Delicatum is an Aussie type that is a natural hybrid that can be found in the wild. One of the most highly fragrant Dendrobiums you can have. If you want to see a specimen plant beyond all dreams, Ed's got one lurking somewhere, not in with his Paphiopedilums and stuff like that. It's somewhere else, and it was left in a freezing cold greenhouse down below 0 in the winter and bloomed its head off. You'd have to go back and find the old video, but a stunning version of that. This is the one that was a mass of orange blooms that has no name, and unfortunately that's going on to the workload. That needs tidying up and getting in some fresh media to take advantage of the new growths that are coming on at the moment. And I need to keep my eye on those new growths, because all of the old leaves have this problem. If the new growths continue to have that problem, then there's something fundamentally wrong with the plant and it'll have to go. But at the moment I'll give it a chance to rejuvenate itself and grow some clean new growths. I mean, the new leaves don't look bad at the moment. I'll have to keep my eye on it. If this spreads and comes out and appears on new growths, then it'll have to go. This one at the back is that's a primary cross. It's called Formidable, and it's got Formosum in it and Infundibulum. The blooms on it are colossal. They're Cattleya size. And I've been struggling with this plant for nearly 2 years now. It hasn't bloomed for 3, but we do have a nice strong new growth coming at the base, so maybe that's its saving grace. This was last year's growth. There's no sign of a bud yet, or is there? But that's a wait and see. It was repotted with poor roots, but we now have active roots, yeah, and a new growth to go with it, which will be more roots. So it should at least bloom on that next growth. This is the zombie Dendrobium. This was dead as a doornail to all intents and purposes, with canes that are obviously gone. And I didn't hold out a lot of hope for it. It's bursting with life all over the place. New growths coming out left, right and centre. So it's another one of those. If I'd given up on it and put it under the hedge, it probably would have grown under the hedge, quite honestly. The life was in there, lurking. So new growth tucked in behind that cane, coming up there. Hopefully it'll find a way out. 2 there, another one here part way up a cane, and another 2 at the base of that cane. So this is bursting back into life. And this is an incredibly complex cross. It's classed as Jarak Spin Blue crossed with Wendy Lim Shuang. But if you dig down in there, fundamentally, when you get down to the species that went into this cross, it's an antelope type. So yet again, a totally different type of Dendrobium. So that's those 4. Standing well back now to get these 3 Oncidium types in. These are all biggies. And I mean biggies. No, just to give you sort of size of the pseudobulbs on this. I'm not quite sure whether this is Oncostelli. I think it is. Yeah, it's on the tag. It says Oncostelli, and this is Catatanti. It has one of the largest, most floriferous spikes you can imagine, and yeah, it is going to do it. It is pushing a spike. Well, I'd have been worried if it didn't. It bloomed on this last new growth. Over the winter, all of the old bulbs have dropped their leaves. This one's still got its leaves. This is the latest growth, and this is going to bloom. This had a poor root system for a while, but it is replacing it now. Some of them are aerial, but there's an awful lot gone down in the pot. And yeah, coming into bloom down the line. Takes quite a while for the spike to develop, because it's probably 2.5, maybe even 3 feet long, with something like 50 blooms on. So it does take a while. But so down the line a bit. This is a funny one. This is Gilded Tower Mystic Maze. Lovely blooms, brassica-like blooms, but the old pseudo bulbs go almost black. They just do. They darken with age. Now this put up this growth. And then it pushed up this one, which is smaller. But again, poor root system that it is now showing signs of replacing. It hasn't got a good root system to support a plant that's relatively large, but it is growing some new ones now. This one is one of the Fusarium set from the same source. I can't knock it, quite honestly. I mean, the 3 that came from Madeira, from a nursery, the 3 Miltonias, there's no excuse for that. Nurseries should know better. But this was a lovely lady who sold orchids on eBay down in Devon. I even went to collect some orchids from her house, and she showed me around her collection. We had a chat and a walk around the garden. A lovely lady. And I don't believe she knew that a large portion of her collection was infested with Fusarium, and I certainly didn't know at the time. But this was one of those, so I've been recovering this for some time. This is an Alicera, Sunday Best Pink Skirt, and it was awarded. This is recovered, I have no doubt. Older part of the plant, probably still bunged up. This growth wasn't that good, but the latest one is. Nice big, fat, good leaves, loads of roots coming out of it. I'd be surprised if this growth doesn't bloom, but there's no signs of it doing it yet. So we'll have to wait and see with that one. Progress on that one needs another new growth, but it doesn't need it to produce a root system. It's already done that. So I'd class that one as recovered from its original problem. So it can be done. And yeah, it's been growing on well for the last sort of 6 to 9 months, once I twigged what was wrong with my plants and got at them. So that one's made it. Good job too. Now, if ever there was a Dendrobium cross that's got its genes mixed up, surely this is a prime example. Something very wrong with the makeup of this plant. It's called Lovely Virgin Angel. It will not grow from the base of the plant. It pushes out growths partway up the plant, which must therefore be termed as kikis. But they grow very well. But if you just look at the growth pattern, here, halfway up the cane, it produced a kiki. Yeah? And then from the same place it's producing another one. And round here, that produced a kiki, and I took it off because it had roots and planted it separately, along with that one. And now that kiki produced a kiki, which has produced a kiki. So it's effectively got a new base there that could be taken off and a new plant started. I may well do that. But I do have at least one of these that is growing as a separate plant. But this is a weird one. The only reason I'm keeping this is because the blooms are nice. I haven't seen them for a long time. But yeah, that just grows strange. And I've just accepted now that that's what it does. I can't stop it, can I? If that's the way it wants to grow, it's the way it wants to grow, but it will not grow from the base of the plant. So I'm seriously thinking of starting a new base here. You know, there is a base there. You know, you've got a stump, new growth, another new growth, all with good roots. So that's a plant, self-contained plant. I think I may well do that. So that can go on the list of workload, but not today, because there's no urgency to do that. I think I may well have a go at just taking those growths off from the point they touch the cane with their roots, pot them up separately, and I'll probably just dump the mother plant because it refuses to grow from the base. It's forming new bases, which are the basis for new plants. So why not just do that and then see what it does? At least the new growths will be from the base of the plant then, if that's what it wants to do. But that's a weird one. Right, these are my two Neophonetas. They weren't filmed too long ago, literally because I noticed a spike starting. Well, the spike is pushing on nicely now, and these two will come out to play a little more often now because they're coming away from the glass. It's their growing period now. They don't need the high light. They've both got clonal names. Higashi something or other. It's in my notes, but the end of the name has faded off. Lovely variegated form. This is currently pushing out some new roots and signs of growth, and I've just spotted a couple of scale near the bottom. They could be mealybugs on that, but it's going to get a spray anyway. And then this is a genuine miniature that's never bloomed, and again it'll have a long clonal name. Fukuyamara, or along those lines. And if you remember last time this was filmed, it had a tiny little fern. Well, that's growing well. It can stay there for now, it's not hurting. And again, new growths pushing out and new roots pushing out. So those are my two Neos, one of which is going to bloom soon.